In my review of The Rise of Skywalker, I joked that Rey hovering in midair had given me Dr. Manhattan vibes. Since looking back at the whole Star Wars sequel trilogy, I've actually come to realise how much this is now the case. The new Jedi powers have given Disney stroke Lucasfilm writers a big headache for the future of the franchise. Almost as if there was no plan in place. In this video, I'll be investigating the way the Jedi powers have evolved and the problems this may cause for future films. Firstly, let's look at the way the Force powers of the Jedi have evolved throughout the films. As I've said before, I'm not a follower of the various books, comics and animations around Star Wars, so I'm just looking at the movies here. I'm just getting that in before someone tells me that it's all covered in a cartoon or something. Starting with the original trilogy, the Force is depicted in A New Hope as more of a mental type power. We see Obi-Wan using the Jedi mind trick, Luke training with his blast shield of his helmet down, and finally destroying the Death Star without using his targeting computer. Of course, we do see Darth Vader force choking people, so a physical aspect of the Force is suggested. In The Empire Strikes Back, the physical aspect is advanced. We see Luke moving his lightsaber in the first scenes, and then later levitating rocks. This builds to Yoda lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp, and later on Darth Vader chucking various things at Luke while he fights him. What a dick. In Return of the Jedi, the only advance in Force powers we see is Grandpa Palpy with his electric fingers. And we all know how shit he is using them. Of course, Force Ghosts are in there too, and they're clearly acting as sort of advisors only. Incidentally, it always bugs me now rewatching A New Hope that when Han Solo says he doesn't believe in the Force, that Obi-Wan doesn't just force grab his blaster or something. You know, levitate Chewie and go, explain that then, smart arse. When the prequel trilogy came out, there was no real advancement in Force powers. There was a few missteps. Right at the start of The Phantom Menace, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan use super fast Force sprint to get away from the battle droids. This never comes up again, leaving an opening for criticism around why they don't do it all the time. This is really the nub of the issue with superpowers, but we'll get onto that later. So in the first 6 Star Wars films, we've got an idea that the Force allows Jedi and Sith to have superior reflexes, have visions of the future, use mind powers to read people's feelings, use the Jedi mind trick to influence the weak-minded, move objects around, and become Force Ghosts, an advanced level ability apparently. And of course, powerful Sith can use Force lightning. It's a pretty good list of superpowers, and generally, when they would come in handy, they get used. We've got 6 films there where Force powers are pretty well established and pretty consistently used. Then you get the sequel trilogy. The Force Awakens starts things off. Right at the beginning, Kylo Ren stops a blaster bolt in mid-air. Now this might not seem much, as we've seen Force users deflecting laser blasts a lot by this point. However, freezing it suggests a superior level of power. Think about the Matrix. Neo starts off dodging bullets to show his great powers, but at the end, once he's reached God mode, he can just stop them in mid-air. Kylo does this with a blaster shot as if it takes 0 effort, and then it never comes up again. It might not seem like a big deal, but it's an example of the new writers/directors wanting to develop new cool-looking Force powers. Something to make the audience go, "Whoa!" without thinking if they will actually affect the story or the universe. The Force Awakens doesn't really do much more damage, apart maybe from Luke's lightsaber giving Rey flashbacks of previous films' events. It's The Last Jedi, of course, where things start to really fall apart. I wonder why that is. It starts with Force Skypes, where 2 Force users can talk face to face from the other side of the galaxy. It's hinted here that there's a physical aspect to it when Kylo can feel the rain from Rey's side of the conversation. Force Ghost Yoda pops up later, and not only can he physically bonk Luke on the head, he can summon lightning to blow up the Jedi library. Incidentally, surely one of the shittiest libraries ever. Then it escalates again when Luke's astral projection turns up at the end. Not only does he appear to actually be there, but he has Han's dice, which are physically there until Luke actually dies. This is a massive leap in Force powers. If I was of a mind to make excuses, I'd say that maybe it was a top-level Force power developed by Luke, and the effort did apparently kill him. But it was still a jarring new power that had huge implications. Not to be outdone, J.J. Abrams said, "Hold my beer," and took it even further. So by the end of The Rise of Skywalker, Force users can fly, kind of, physically fight each other remotely, rather than just Skype, teleport objects to each other, Force ghosts can move objects in the physical world, Palpy can suck Force power from people, and use Force EMP blasts to disable a whole fleet. And of course the big one, Jedi can now heal things and even bring people back from the dead. When you add these powers to the existing ones, you basically move away from Jedi being warrior monks with telepathic/telekinetic powers into the realms of them being gods. And this is where the Dr. Manhattan problem comes in. Now, I'm no comic book expert,
I find that rather difficult to believe.
but in the world of superpowered beings, there exists a simple rule. Basically, if someone has a special ability, they must use it whenever they logically need to. It sounds simple, but it does pose some storytelling issues. If you have a character who can speak to animals in your story, then you need to write in at least one scene where they're in a jungle or a zoo or something like that, so they can use this power. Otherwise, what's the point? It's like Nightboat.
Nightboat! The crime-solving boat!
There always has to be a river or an inlet, or there would be no story. The opposite, of course, is also true. If your animal talking hero is in a situation where asking a leopard where the bad guy is hiding would solve the story too quickly and easily, you need to write in a reason why he can't do that. Or the audience will be confused, and some of them will have to invent their own headcanon. How come he's no asked that leopard for help? I don't know, maybe it's a foreign leopard. What? I mean, maybe it's French or something, and he only speaks English, leopard. You're just making up a shit excuse for shoddy writing now. Or maybe he was off sick the day they taught leopard at his school. Oh, fuck off, man. Take Superman. Originally, he was a guy who could fly, had great strength, and was invulnerable. He mainly punched bank robbers or tied them up with metal bars or something like that. As his powers grew, it became clear that he could solve any issue with no danger of being hurt. I mean, the guy can lift mountains, so if he punched a bank robber, he'd take his bloody head clean off. And so it got boring. So they had to invent kryptonite and increase the powers of his enemies just to add some sense of jeopardy. Even then, Superman's power level is so off the scale, a lot of comic book or superhero fans find him dull. And that has a knock-on effect to his allies. Even in the Justice League film, as soon as he turns up, the fight's over. So they have to have him absent, sulking somewhere, to give that final fight some excitement. Hey, Soup, we're off to fight fucking Steppenchild or whatever the fuck his name is. You ready? Nah, you get going and I'll come along later. The fate of the whole planet and billions of lives is on the line here, man. Yeah, I know, but I fancy sulking around the cornfields for a bit. Don't worry, it'll take me about 20 seconds to pummel him once I get there. You guys just keep him busy and try not to get killed. Oh, for fuck's sake. The reason I call this the Dr. Manhattan problem rather than the Superman problem is because of how well it was handled by Alan Moore in the seminal graphic novel Watchmen. And I don't even know what seminal means. Covered in spunk, I presume. If you've not read Watchmen or seen the film, it's basically a world with masked superheroes, and they're either fighting for justice or, spoilers, they're trying to kill millions of people. But these masks, as they're called, don't actually have superpowers. Only Dr. Manhattan does, and he's almost a god. He can teleport anywhere, manipulate matter with his mind, create multiple copies of himself, disintegrate things and people with just a thought. He can increase his size, and he also experiences the past, present, and future all at once. And he's also indestructible. In storytelling terms, he can almost do anything and he's unstoppable. How can an aspiring bad guy hope to have his evil scheme succeed against a guy who can see the future and then pop up wherever he is and vaporise him with a snap of his fingers? Well, if you are an aspiring supervillain, you obviously need to deal with him, and Alan Moore spends a fair bit of time in Watchmen dealing with this problem. In Watchmen, the villain of the piece, spoilers, it's Ozymandias, knows that the psychic blast of his superweapon will hinder Dr. Manhattan's ability to see the future, so that's that power neutralised. He also manipulates Dr. Manhattan emotionally into abandoning the Earth and going into exile on Mars. So Dr. Manhattan is physically removed and his power to see the future is compromised, which means that Ozzy can carry out his evil plan. Once Dr. Manhattan's back on the scene, Ozzy's quickly dealt with, but it's too late by then. If Dr. Manhattan hadn't been so effectively dealt with, the reader or viewer would just be sitting there going, why isn't he doing this or that or the other to stop this? Which brings us back to the all-new Super Jedis. Nothing is done in The Last Jedi, and especially The Rise of Skywalker, to address the issues brought up by these new Force powers. Just some examples. If a Jedi can teleport physical objects about, why not teleport a bomb onto an enemy ship? If a Force ghost can pop up and shoot lightning at people, why not take out enemies that way? Presumably, seeing as they're dead, Force ghosts are invulnerable, so if they can appear anywhere and physically affect the world, why can't they just appear and move stuff about to help allies or defeat enemies? If Jedi can heal people, even bring them back from the dead, why has it never been done before? And a point I made in my Rise of Skywalker video, if they can fight by projecting remotely, why ever leave the house? In The Rise of Skywalker, Luke's Force Ghost shows up, catches a lightsaber, lifts his X-Wing out of the ocean, and then sits on his spooky arse and does shit all. He could have said to Rey, you sit here and have a rest, love. I'll pop over to Exegol and shoot a lightning bolt up Palpy's ass. But no, lazy. So basically my point is that, like Alan Moore did with Dr. Manhattan, any future Star Wars writers now have to find a way to negate all these powers. Come up with some reason why these abilities aren't used to just sort out any problems as soon as they come up. Or, they could just decanonize the sequel trilogy. Just a thought. I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, leave a comment. Share the video, like, subscribe, ring the bell, kick the turnip, whatever floats your boat. I'll see you later.